I find that for me it's about connecting with country, and it's about connecting with with my family are from, and being able to touch those clays and being able to connect with the same ground from where my ancestors are from. And then also being able to use commercial clays as well and create forms that are connected with that history and with, with the concept of what I feel clay can be used for, which is a vessel, an element that brings things together and contains. I like experimenting, and I don't mind when things go wrong, and you know sometimes you can create something nice out of something that's gone wrong. So the challenges in making the work are exciting challenges, and I think the challenge in trying to make a living out of the work is the most difficult challenge.
But I love it because I always say that ceramics is very romantic. You relinquish control and you go for the best possible outcome rather than being afraid of what might happen.
What I really enjoy is the surprise that you get from like collaborating with people. You never really know what the next project will look like, and I find a lot of joy being able to see where the pieces end up.
And then I love opening a good kiln. Like, it's a very good feeling when you open a good firing. Clay and ceramics are fraught with challenges. Clay does what it wants, it has a memory, and a lot of the times you cannot force it to do what it's already going to do.
I think that it's really interesting how organic clay is and how it can really take over the form itself. You may have an idea of how it was created, and then how organic the piece is. It may be a bit more rounded or a bit more straight than expected. I kind of, I enjoy that.
So I started working with clay about 30 years ago in art college, but I grew up in Nara, which is surrounded by mountain, and rice field was everywhere. So that means mud and clay was everywhere, and that's probably started, everything when I was little. So
my first experience with clay was when I was doing my first year of uni. I was at the Michaelis School of Art in Cape Town. It's linked to the Cape Town University, and we had a ceramics section, and the lecturer said, go and find clay. And we had to go and dig it out the mountain and bring it back to the studio and process it and try to make a sculpture with this clay that we had dug up out of the mountain. I thought it was very stressful in the beginning, but it was a really wonderful process, and it just started me off loving clay. I did learn with a very, very strict old school studio potter who taught me all the basics, but was very rigid in how we should use the clay and how we should glaze work and that kind of thing. And that was great because it was a great grounding. But then now with my practice and what I do, I don't obey any of those rules.
I saw it advertised on a local news program, and I asked my mother if we could go along. So my sister was 5 and she just started school, and my mum took us to the class. We really enjoyed it. We painted tiles. Then she was really fascinated by it. And while my sister and I were at school, she would go to these classes. Then she started teaching there and set up her own studio. So I always had the materials available to me to explore if I wanted to. I was never pressured to do so, but I was super fascinated by it. And by the age of 13, I had a kiln in my family home. So then that just drove my fascination forward more.
I started working with clay in 2015. I went to a weekly pottery class in West End called Clay School. I decided to start taking these classes because I was working as a photographer before that, and I just decided that I kind of needed like a playful outlet and just a way to kind of like get my creativity out with like no stakes, and just to be able to have a lot of fun and see what happened without, needing to like succeed at it.
There was this creek that was just across the road from where my nana used to live, so we would often wander down there. And I'll never forget just putting my hands in the clay and seeing all the colours and the ochre pigments. And from there I was really intrigued.
The biggest challenge in ceramics, I think, across the board is just reckoning with the fact that at any stage the piece could completely be destroyed or it could go wrong, and really toughening yourself to the point that you are okay with a separation in your work.
I love planning what I'm going to do, and I love making, I love carving and all the little detail, and spending hours carving and making something very detailed. I enjoy painting and glazing the work, so I really do get a great deal of fulfillment out of every aspect of the work. The biggest challenge for an artist, and it's not only me, I'm sure it's every artist, is making a living from your work.
So when I'm carving plaster or when I'm just pinching clay, my brain get into just a really calm state, and that's probably the interesting part of the making.
I think for me, what I really enjoy about clay is how it feels to be using it. That's really where I get a lot of joy, is like the tactile nature of it, instead of the, real like technical aspects of it. Yeah, even though it's fascinating, and I know it's fascinating, but I just can't get there.
When I'm working with clay, I feel like I'm working in it with various forms. If I'm going out to country to collect ochres, it's usually after rainy periods, or I'm thinking about, how water plays a part in the movement of those ochres and that clay, and the way that all those minerals spread during the rain, during the water. And then when that's taken out, then it's dried. So, air plays a part in that. It dries out. And if it's something that gets fired, then there's that whole firing process. And depending on what kind of firing process you're doing, that in itself is an art form, really. So I find there's a real elemental relationship between clay in its various forms, or ceramic in its various forms, one and the same, and how they are treated and processed.
So I drew inspiration from mainly nature, but pretty much everything I see, and also I get an inspiration from other form of art, music, and also architecture as well. So when I'm making, I tend to go to the nature to get some good idea from it, because nature won't really say something, but sometimes the nature just give you some strange idea. So that's why.
I love every aspect of my work. I really feel passionate about what I'm doing, and I love sitting and working, and I get a great deal of satisfaction and pleasure out of it.
I draw my inspiration from a variety of places. Sometimes fashion, decadent food, different mediums from different artists as well. Sometimes I'll have a look at like a beautiful glass artist, and I'll think to myself, can I create this out of clay?
I get my inspiration from everything that's around me. I've specifically focused on my immediate environment. Since I moved to Australia, I felt very disconnected from the land, and I felt very disconnected from everywhere, actually. I felt so out of place and so alien, and so I specifically decided to that I had to get to know my environment really well. So now that's become the greatest source of my inspiration, is looking at what's around me, especially in the natural environment.
I look a lot at ancient pottery from all sorts of different cultures, as well as like painting, textiles, all sorts of things, and also like natural forms, so like patterns found in nature, and tendrils and vines and spirals, and all of that's kind of like found in my work.
Cats have been the biggest motif in my works ever since I started. I also love colour. I draw on art history a lot of the time, different art movements, a lot of pop art aesthetics. Fashion is a big one as well. I love looking at runway shows and drawing inspiration from those looks.
My studio is a nice studio, best studio I think in the world. And it's a small, one-car garage space. Have got everything in there, so it's kind of nice to have little, my own space to create something really personal.
I like to listen to the kookaburras in the afternoon, and I like to just take the time to listen to the birds, listen to kookaburras and the magpies. They're all singing their songs in the late afternoon and the early morning. And in moments of focus and flow, I find that really helpful.
There's all different types of clay and different types of glazes, and they all have different outcomes. And there's a lot of chemistry behind that too. I feel like I've got a lot to learn in that way. At the moment, I've been doing a lot of commissioned works where it's quite restricted on what they expect from me. But when I've got time in my studio by myself, I enjoy experimenting with those different elements.
I always work with a whole variety of different types of clay. I love red clays, black clays, dark, light, coarse textured clays, very smooth clays. So I try out different types of clay for trying to get different results for what I'm trying to achieve.
I draw my inspiration from, the world around me. I draw it from the aliveness of materials, just considering exactly what it is that I'm working with and what that means relative to the material composition itself, relating to, its chemical makeup, its history, its cultural meaning, and its relationship to people. Clay is a transformative medium clay is transformed by fire and water. There's a chemistry and science behind it already.